I'm Roy Potter, a former U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel. Welcome to the Potter Expositor.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Well, yes, this is the Potter Expositor, and I'm Roy Potter. And this is a little recording. People are saying hi as they go by. Today is Sunday, November 11th. It is technically the real Veterans Day. Tomorrow is the federal holiday celebrating it, but it's actually today. And I wanted to sit next to this replica, this statue of our first president of the United States and our great military commander and even politician. He wasn't much into politics, but he understood the importance of it. He was the commander, of course, of the Continental Army. And he would be my superior officer, my commander, even today. Now, there are a lot of issues about what the Founding Fathers are really about, but what cannot be argued is that they set in motion a government whereby the normal person could lay claim to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, to the perfect law of liberty, and would have a government that would be chained down by a constitution. Of course, when Washington was fighting the War of Independence, that wasn't quite figured out completely yet, although they were doing so on the basis of the Magna Carta and some other things that talked about individual liberty. But in the end, that's what we got. And President Washington was the one who first instituted that, along with the likes and the help of Thomas Jefferson, who you will see in a minute, replica of him, people like John Adams, John Hancock, Benjamin Franklin, etc. They went against the most powerful country in the world at the time, an empire really, and although there's some questions as to how free we really are from that empire even today, we do have the basics that we can go forward if we choose to. And we're at a difficult time in our history right now where too many of us are too complacent, want to go back to some form of tyranny or slavery. You know, when Israel was set free, if you have read the Bible, Moses, of course, was told by God to go to Pharaoh and demand that Pharaoh release his people, set his people free. And after a long, difficult time and much suffering upon the Egyptian people, the Pharaoh finally said that he was going to set them free. And you can read the rest of the story, but the part I want to bring up is the part when Israel was out in the wilderness, and they were starting to complain because the comforts of their slavery were something that they actually missed. They didn't understand the importance of individual freedom at that point. Their consciences, their consciousnesses were not yet fully opened to what personal liberty is. And many of them started to complain about Moses. Why did you take us away from our slavery in Egypt and bring us out here to die? They didn't understand the great gift that was about to be bestowed on them, and in fact had been. We, Americans, in the United States of America today, are in that same position where we would rather have government take care of us, put us back in slavery, than to appreciate, honor, and sustain our personal liberty. What I like to call, as James described, the Apostle James, the perfect law of liberty. We're about ready to throw all that away because, first of all, we have people in the government and other institutions that have poisoned our minds against what personal liberty is, what the perfect law of liberty is, and wishes to return us to a tyrannical form which our forefathers like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson stood up against. Again, there are historical things that we could argue about that, but that's the bottom line. So today on Veterans Day, as I have often said in the past, I honor those who sacrificed for what they believed they were sacrificing for, our freedom and our lives and our fortunes and our sacred honor. But unfortunately, and I have to be the bearer of this news, and I have been often in the past, our military should always, and our police should always be looked upon as a necessary evil, not something to be glorified and worshipped, and certainly not something to be used to subjugate the world with, and certainly not used to subjugate our people with or turn against us. And unfortunately, if we will be honest with ourselves, we know that that has happened all too often. The wars of the last 30 years, 40 years have all wars have been bad. They've all been orchestrated by the bankers. But the last few decades, our military has been misused. And although I still honor our vets, I'm one, for what they intended to do, the fact of the matter is that most often what their intentions were and how they were actually used were two different things. And so while I want us to honor those who have sacrificed for us, both in the police and in the military, that I understand the difficulties that they face, but by the same token, some of those institutions, including our intelligence community, are the first to attack our freedoms and to attack our liberties and to use our military and our police in pursuit of very nefarious purposes and objectives. And we have allowed that to happen. And it's to that I want to address today and say that we must, as the American people, get our understanding of constitutional issues back. We must fight against the evil that is facing us in unprecedented ways today. First by stealth and by altering the language and by arguing about political correctness, et cetera, and then turning to the violence, which they will certainly do. The theft that we see going on with our voting system right now has long been with us, but it's being used to an unprecedented degree today with the help of people like Soros and our own intelligence community, which I have long stood against. Our intelligence community and our military and our police must be reined into constitutional principles. Without that, we didn't need ISIS or Al-Qaeda to threaten our freedoms. Our own government did. So let's honor our forefathers, President General and then President George Washington, and also our great founder and writer of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson, who also became a president during a very perilous times with the Barbary Coast, if you'll remember that. If you don't, look it up. It's very interesting how he handled that. Apropos and appropriate, of course. So in the end here, what I want to say is that, of course, while we want to honor our military, remember, the military is a necessary evil. It is not to be glorified, worshipped, and we shouldn't be looking up to it as the be-all, end-all. It depends on how it's used. If it's used to protect our liberties, truly our liberties, and our great nation in such a way that we are not trying to build an empire, then it is doing the right thing. And so what I will leave with you today, which I've quoted before, is a quote from Cicero. He was a Roman senator and philosopher, and that's how we'll leave this transmission after I'm all done with Thomas Jefferson next. We'll leave with Cicero's quote, and I want you to see it and understand what it says. And consider the words of wisdom that Cicero 2,000 years ago gave to the world and to political and military leaders alike. So let me read it to you right now so that you'll know what it is while it's here on the screen. And this is what it says. And it's very important to understand this. Quote, "That kind of courage which is conspicuous in danger and enterprise, if devoid of justice, is absolutely undeserving of the name of valor. It should rather be considered as a brutal fierceness, outraging every principle of humanity." That's from Cicero, The Offices, Book 1, Chapter 19. Do not allow our military to be used to subjugate innocent people around the world any longer, or to help the bankers, or the corporatists, or the New World Order, or the deep state, and certainly not our intelligence community to build their own empire and their own government. Be awake, understand what's happening, demand that the military only be used, and the police for that matter, only be used in a limited capacity as it was originally intended. Not for nation building, not for regime change, not for taking over countries for their resources or forcing them into the Western banking system, and certainly not subjugating our own American brothers and sisters.
When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to this separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness.
Out here for now.